Hey everyone, you're listening to another episode of Read, Watch, Listen, where East Brunswick Public Library connects with people in the community to ask about what they've been enjoying lately. I'm your host, Chris Barnes, and I have a very special guest today. He is a very accomplished man in town. He's a former mayor. He's the current East Brunswick Township Council president. He's a retired teacher. He's the voice of EVTV Sports. Thank you for being on the show. Kevin McEvoy, everybody.
Hey, Chris, thanks for the invite. When I received the email, it was pretty exciting at the dinner table with my wife, going over, reflecting on what I can say about what it is that I read, what it is that I listen to. People are probably curious.
Yeah, people are curious. I also find that from talking as hosting this is that one common thing that everyone has is it's so hard to quantify when you think about what exactly have I been reading. I know even for myself, I read a lot, but then when someone asks me, I'm always on the spot. So I have to think back to that. All right, so we're going to start this with the first question. What have you been reading recently?
Well, the thing about reading, Chris, in my opinion, is that everyone, literally everyone, should spend a minimum of a half hour each day sitting in the comfort zone of their home, their bedroom, their living room, and pull out that book, old school, pull out that book and read. And so what I do each day, my preference is nonfiction. So I do a lot of reading each day in the arena of the text with my pen in hand regarding, for argument's sake, like I brought with me Bobby Kennedy, or it could be a biographical sketch of President Roosevelt, or it could be, I have a very extensive sports collection of autographed books that I pride myself on. And I also have another extensive collection of leather-bound books that I pride myself on with regard to my library. So when people come over to the house and they see my library, whoa, got a few books here. Yeah, we do.
That's pretty cool. So what is your most treasured autographed sports book?
There's no doubt that it's a New York Yankees book that I had given my father on that time period from 1964 when they began to tail off until 1978. And it's a book that I gave my dad, but at the same time, I took that book and had Thurman Munson autograph it.
Oh, wow.
And then, unfortunately, 1979, Thurman passed it. So you caught me with a surprise question.
No.
I didn't come up with. I didn't think that was going to be one of them. That's a good one.
This is Read, Watch, Listen, where we ask the hard-hitting questions.
Yeah.
So is there anything else that you've been reading recently that you enjoy?
Well, I'm reading Kerry Kennedy's book about her father. And the thing about nonfiction is you can sort of open this up to any page that you want, and you can start reading. So few are willing to brave the disapproval of their fellows, the censure of their colleagues, the wrath of their society. Moral courage is a rarer commodity than bravery in battle or great intelligence, yet it is the one essential vital quality for those who seek to change the world, which yields the most painfully to change. So Ripples of Hope by Kerry Kennedy is the most recent.
Now, there's always a question we ask here, and it always gets a good controversial, everyone is on one side or the other. It's nothing too dangerous, but are you on team ebook or team physical book?
Oh, physical book, period.
I am with you on that one.
I don't have the collection for that. It's you have to pick up that book. You open, first thing you do, give it a sniff. I love the smell of a brand new book. I love the look of the cover in terms of how the writer and her production team decided to make this particular cover, which could attract people. So notice I responded quickly without hesitation.
Oh, I'm with you on that one. I find even when I wind up reading an ebook, I feel that I don't process it enough because I'm just trying to power through it. Like the same way you read an article online. So you just keep scrolling to get to the bottom of it and finish it. And I don't think I get as much retention out of it. So I'm with you on team paper.
And the other thing that's interesting about my style of reading, I don't read at the beach. We have a place down in Long Beach Island, and I don't carry the book up to the beach. I find the most comforting place to read is in the house, in the living room, in a particular chair, and get psyched for what you're going to do for the next half hour / 45 minutes, pen in hand as well.
Well, especially if you're doing like a deep dive on what you're reading, so you can refer to it. No, I totally understand that.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and I'm not a fiction guy. Like I just said, you can open this book to any page and start reading at that point. With the fiction, you sort of have to go with the flow of what the author's trying to do, and I'm just not a big fan of it.
I'm the same way as you are in that. So whenever I go on library outreach, people say, oh, what's a good novel to read? I'm like, well, I pretty much exclusively read nonfiction. I like the Game of Thrones books. I'm sure they're wonderful if you're into that, but not me. However, if you give me a book on the business end of George R.R. Martin and how the TV series got made and the licensing and just his process, I would be entertained on that for days.
Agreed.
And I think it's a neat thing too, is like with nonfiction, you can either learn something completely new that you have no idea about before, you're going into completely cold, or you could read something that either confirms your knowledge on that topic or it contrasts that. And so it makes you think more. So.
Now, also, I spend a considerable amount of time in front of my desktop and I read. My primary platform is Twitter, and I read extensively what people are saying. And by the same token, I do a lot of tweeting my thoughts, my ideas, my concerns, my questions, my views. I'm not one of these Twitter persons who said, the material that I tweet is not really who I am, but everything I tweet is the stuff that I'm promoting.
Okay.
And then if I have one more thing I did mention, I spend considerable amount of time watching, because it intertwines here, with other township municipalities in terms of how they're running their particular agenda meetings, or how they're running their zoning board meetings, or how they're running their planning board meetings. So I do spend a lot of time reading that material at my desktop.
No, it makes sense to me. If another township municipality is doing something that's working and it's a great idea, it's worth looking into and trying to find out how they do it.
Right.
All right, so let's go next on it. We did the R for read, so let's talk about listening. What have you been listening to lately? This could be anything from music to a comedian to a podcast.
Well, I was trying to figure that one out in terms of where I listen. So I do a lot of listening in my car, my truck, and I listen to Miami Steve's Underground Garage on Sirius Radio. And so as I'm buzzing over to the library, or I'm buzzing over to CVS, or even we're buzzing down to the beach, that's the primary thing that I listen to. I have about 1,500 records in my record collection, and over the course of the past few years, I've gradually given some to my son. I'm still a vinyl listener. Even when it wasn't in or cool to be doing this a couple of years ago, I was still listening to my LPs. But now what I'm able to do is, if I'm on the computer, I can open up a separate sidebar and open up YouTube, and I can listen to the LPs that I have in my collection. So I can listen while I read, and that's how I go through that whole process.
So what are some of your go-to albums?
Ooh. It's just like that reading question, right?
Sorry to put you on the spot.
No, that's what this is all about. The spot is good. Let's go right to the Beatles. Let's go right to the White Album, the 1969. That would be my fave. I was also a big fan of that mid-'70s post-punk, new wave, Elvis Costello, Nick Lowe. I appreciated the poppy sounds of all of that. And then when I got into the 90s, by then I was sort of fading away from purchasing records and adding to my collection, but I still had it. I never sold off the collection. I much preferred giving to my son 5 albums at a time.
No, it's a meaningful way to do it. So let's talk about the watch. Now, I know that you watch other municipal and town meetings to find out what's going on.
Right.
So what else do you like to watch for?
Well, we mentioned before we turned the microphones on, I'm a big sports fan. So especially in the summer months, almost every evening, the Yankees are on TV. I like watching the pregame show where we get some interviews with some of the players. And then the game has been shortened up, so it's a 2-hour game, so it's not a big deal. I can watch 6-7 innings and then join my wife when we watch together some of the TV series that we like. We like Chicago PD, we like Fire, we like FBI, we like those exciting television productions that we watch together. I also spend a considerable amount of time on watching the news. And because you can have that remote in your hand and you can go from MSNBC over to Fox News, over to Channel 62, which is New Jersey News, and back over to Channel 13 and back over. It's amazing.
Yeah, if you're a news junkie, this is
right.
What a time to be.
Exactly. Especially when wife and I are political junkies with regard to our community. So we're definitely in tune with all the EBTV productions that we may have not been part of, or we are part of and just want to review and see how that looks. And as we said earlier, watching other townships, planning board, zoning board, even library board. I was watching the Edison Library Board meeting last night and saying to myself, maybe that's something we ought to look into having.
So any movies that you're a big fan of?
I'm not going from movie channel to movie channel to movie channel. You're catching me on the spot once again. But those World War II longest day type of movies, I'm a fan of that. Donna, and that's my wife, Donna, we have not been to the theater, not because of COVID, but even pre-COVID, it's the span of time where we lost interest. So for me to rattle off a half dozen movies, I really couldn't do that at this moment.
Yeah, I completely understand. I know what you mean. So I know you're very big on Twitter. So what's your Twitter handle so people can follow you?
At Kevin T. McEvoy.
Great, thank you. Is there anything else that you'd like our listeners to know?
It's very important that we read, whether it's your 7-year-old son or your 70-year-old grandmother. So we opened up the conversation by asking me about reading, and I said how that half-hour segment, it didn't even say an hour. I tried to find myself reading for an hour without interruption. So I'm just reinforcing the fact that all of us, every resident in the community, should find the time to read in a traditional sense. And then what you do with that reading often lends itself to family engagement. You could be a 10-year-old in fourth grade having a summer reading list and then sharing what you read with Grandpa. And Grandpa's going to be so excited to dive into that conversation with you. So I'm glad we had this chat. I like the fact that we started with reading, and then we went into the watching, then we went into the listening.
No, thank you. I couldn't, and again, with the way you just ended it right now, I couldn't have thought of a better way to do it. So I'd like to thank you for being our guest today. You can catch all of our other podcasts up on www.ebpl.org/podcast. Special thanks to our producer, Melissa Hosick, who makes it sound so wonderful every week. If you check the show notes, we're going to have all of the recommendations so you can find them at the library. For East Brunswick Public Library, I'm Chris Barnes. Thanks for listening. Thank you.